There's no easy path forward for Democrats right now. And while they're in search of a leader, they're also searching for an identity.
The Democrats seem to have no voice, no face, no message. They seem to be almost leaderless.
They are essentially leaderless in a lot of ways. They don't have a strategy on how to fight back against Trump.
And why rely on only one man when you can get a dynamic duo to lead the way?
What the?
Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. Bernie Sanders and AOC are, in my opinion, trying to make a run here, get people in the mood to see them be on the ticket. This is their answer to the mess.
I think Democrats are shocked at the speed with which Donald Trump has attacked a lot of their golden objects of respect and what they've always deified. The culture, their political radicalism, life on college campuses. But look, I think the voters just busted open a big frailty in the Democrat Party, which is that they don't really relate to anyone anymore. They're so far left, as I've said before, they've left America. Watch.
There's no easy path forward for Democrats right now. And while they're in search of a leader, they're also searching for an identity.
The Democrats seem to have no voice, no face, no message. They seem to be almost leaderless.
They are essentially leaderless in a lot of ways. They don't have a strategy on how to fight back against Trump.
Yeah, I think that they're actually doing their bidding right now. They're letting all these Democrats kind of do things like Bernie Sanders and, what's her name? AOC. But then there's also Michelle Obama and her podcast. There's the other guy, Gavin Newsom and his podcast. I think they're just trying to see who actually people are drawn to. Yeah, they're letting them all go out and do these things because honestly, Kamala Harris didn't get, elected. No one voted for her, and they thought that she would be a shoo-in because she was a woman and a woman of color. And they thought that they didn't really need a message because during her campaign, she didn't have a message. That was the problem. Right. She really didn't have a message. So I'm not shocked that they don't have anything to say right now. I actually just think they thought optics would really carry them to the win. Yeah. And it turned out that the country is such in such bad shape that optics was just not going to cut it this time. Yeah. And so I do think that the party is really just letting all of these different people go out and do what they want to do and see, throw some at the wall and see what sticks. You know what I mean? So, and I also think that like the part, because I do agree with you, I think they want it to look, for some reason the Democrats are obsessed with making sure all categories are represented. Like, it's so weird. They want to make sure they get a woman of color, and an older man, a younger man. You know what I mean? A gay man. Whatever. They want to have all these things, all these different, the look of it to be represented. And they still haven't gotten the memo that it wasn't the problem. The problem was the policy. The policies were the problem, not the look of it. So Kamala Harris she couldn't even do an interview without giving a stump speech. I mean, most politicians are rich people who live amongst each other. They don't really live in the world. They don't really live out around regular people, And I think that even during Trump's, anytime they do anything like a Democratic convention, or when Trump did his speech at the the congressional speech that he did. They always say things like, look at the Republicans and then look at the Democratic Party. We look like America and they don't. Right. And I think they are confused of why people aren't liking them, because they do think, because they talk about sexuality, they talk about being a woman, and they think they talk about, they have men that are willing. A lot of social issues too. Yeah. Beta males who are willing to just not be men for a minute for women to shine. They have that. So they think like, well, this is the future. The future is her. The future is there's not going to be a lot of white people. White people are going to be the minority in 50 years. That's what I'm saying. They're because they think that if they show that optic of women being the majority, of black people or people of color being the majority, if they show like a bunch of men that don't really try to challenge women, they really just sit in the back and clap, you know what I mean? They think that that's the future. So Zoomers at least will look at that and go, yes, that's what we want the future to look like. They can't really understand how a man in his 70s, an old white man in his 70s, again, would win with a party that's majority white.
There seem to be very confused on how we could all just pick yet another white, older man. It's like, because it's not, the country was built on that, right? So that's it. It's not a reach that people would vote for an older white man.
Yeah.
So they feel like, well, we want our country to be represented. We want to be represented differently. We want it to look different and be different. We want to show the progression of America by having a, Hispanic woman, president, or a gay president, or what. They seem to think that's what's important. And I think that coming off this past election, I'm kind of shocked. Like, I think Kara's right. They're going to throw whatever at the wall to see what sticks. But I am kind of shocked that they didn't get the memo still, that they're not understanding that it really had nothing to do necessarily with the look. It had something to do with more than that. They were too focused on the social justice thing. And so they went so far left that even people within their own party said, no more, wait a minute. Now it's going crazy here,
To them, they're thinking, we're winning. All of our famous celebrities, they're all going along with it. You know what I mean? They really ramped up and put a lot of money into celebrities going on her campaign trail. So they really thought they have it. I really do think, though, when Dylan Mulvaney, people don't realize, the public doesn't realize how powerful you can be. When Dylan Mulvaney's Bud White thing didn't work, I think it threw them off a little bit. They were shocked at the pushback, because Bud Light has not been able to recover since that. That was a while back now. That's been a while. I mean, this went on longer than they thought. Yeah. And then Target took down their LGBTQ. And if you think about it, even the LGBTQ month last year, it didn't do well. Well, you didn't see it. Like, also, people started taking it down.
The corporations, who was saying this yesterday, the corporations have come on board and have started taking down their DEI, all these different things. So corporations are even getting into that too, by taking it down and saying, yeah, we don't want that here. So I know they have to be really confused with that. Like, wait a minute, I thought that we were really putting out the propaganda. What happened? Like, why are you not doing right. So it can get confusing for them. But the part this makes them not smart though, because they're not reading the room. You know what I mean? Like, the room is saying, no, we're telling you what we want. We want something like a Donald Trump, but we don't want to be Republicans. That's what their side's saying, right? We want something like that, but maybe still does a bunch of social issues. And now, while I'm totally against the Democratic platform, period, I'm against the platform, what they stand for. For their voter, though, if they're telling you, if those voters, a lot of them, at least most of them, voted for Donald Trump, then that should have been the cue. Hey, they obviously don't want like a Jasmine Crockett type or something. They obviously don't want that. They didn't want Kamala Harris. They don't need to see a black woman or whatever. They just want to have they underestimated their own voter.
And why rely on only one man when you can get a dynamic duo to lead the way?
Not allow you to move this country into an oligarchy.
What they call radical, I believe, is common sense.
Meet the left's new power couple. Though separated by almost a half a century in age, they're ideologically like peanut butter and jelly. They go perfectly together. As they rail against the oligarchy, ooh, big word, it's worth asking which party is really controlled by the mega rich and the out-of-touch elite. Joining me now is Batya Ungar-Sargon, journalist and author of Second Class. Batya, you're making a lot of waves on social media for your comments with Bill Maher the other night, which were fabulous.
Look, here is the thing that your viewers have to remember. Every accusation from a Democrat is a confession. The Democrats are now the party of the wealthy.
It's so true. Every accusation is a confession.
Like I said, they call you what they are.
Yeah.
And so anytime you hear them call someone a Nazi, it's because they actually are acting like that.
Right.
They're the ones who were the mandates.
Yeah.
Who did the band-aids on the vaccine and calling people what did Joe Biden, the virus of the unvaccinated, trying to make people who weren't getting
shaming the unvaccinated.
Shaming people. They're the ones who were telling people they couldn't go back to work unless they did it. You know what I mean? So really,
they were dictators.
Right. Telling people who we're supposed to if you see some out of control, LGBTQ person, we have to call them they.
Does that sound like a dictate? Like
you never hear
dictatorship.
Republicans say that. You can be of them they if you want, but I don't have to.
Yeah.
I don't have to. Be a part of it. You know what I mean? But they always call you what they are, and I think that is what they portray. They portray dictatorship, and I don't think they saw that. I think they thought when they think of dictatorship, they think of like white people,
old white man.
They never thought it could be people of color. Trans people, like all these people you're calling minorities, you're giving them the license to be mean and to be over the top. And a lot of these things are going viral and being made fun of. Yeah. And I don't think they see themselves outside of themselves.
The Democrats are now the party of the wealthy. For every billionaire who backed President Trump in the election, Kamala Harris had 2. 75% of donations that came from hedge fund managers went to Democrats. 75% of Silicon Valley donations went to Democrats. 65% of Americans making over $500,000 a year now are Democrats. Wow. Meanwhile, President Trump absolutely crushed with Americans making under $100,000 a year. He has single-handedly taken the GOP and made it the party of the glorious, multiracial American working class, the hardest working Americans. And Laura, if you want to understand why President Trump is doing anything, whether it's controlling the border, imposing tariffs, getting us out of wars that have nothing to do with us, look at the polling with hardworking Americans who make under $100,000 a year. These are the things that absolutely crush with them, whether they're on the left or on the right. This is a unity president with a unity agenda, and that, Laura, is why the Democrats hate him, because they have absolutely nothing with which to fight him.
No, so their slogan is fight the oligarchy. And the funny thing is they are the oligarchy. I read the stats that she just put out there. I actually read those before with Kamala's campaign. I think she reached like $1 billion, something like that. Like her campaign. So her financing for her campaign was with a small group of billionaires.
It wasn't small dollar donations.
No,
she was trying to pretend
it was billionaires.
Oh, these are lots of people coming. Even her rallies were mostly paid people coming in there.
They're the ones that are their campaign financing with most of their, I guess senior level, people in Senate and stuff like that. They are taking money from billionaires. Kamala Harris' campaign reached $1 billion. That didn't happen from the everyday Joe walking around. No, that happened because she was taking large sums of money from bigger companies, corporations, and billionaires. But you're fighting the oligarchy? But you are the oligarchy.
The rallies that she was having, I mean, she paid $10 million of that money to Beyonce to go up there for 4 minutes to talk about abortion. She gave Meg Thee Stallion $5 million.
Talk about waste, fraud, and abuse.
6-figure sums to people like Call Her Daddy, what's the name, Roland Martin, Al Sharpton. Like, she was giving money to these celebrities to come on stage and talk to her. You talk about her, to stump for her. And when that got Cardi B, who couldn't even speak, she couldn't speak without her phone.
Make the stallion over dancing.
And they thought they thought they dumbed down the country enough to just accept that about her. You know what I mean? And she was unpopular amongst Democrats while she was vice president.
Yeah, that's true.
But because Joe Biden stepped down, honestly, like someone mentioned the other day that I think Joe Biden did this because when he went and he endorsed her before everybody. And I think he was mad because they made him step down and he knew she was unpopular. And then he kind of trolled them because now they all had to, because you remember the Obamas they didn't
they took
endorse her right away.
They took a minute.
But they all had to once Joe passed the baton like that without really asking them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? He just kind of said, yeah, she's going to be a good president, right? When he knew he had to step down, the party wasn't going to send him any more money.
Mm-hmm.
And so then all of the big Hillary Clinton, they all had to stand with her, even though they didn't really like her.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because they had no choice at this point. But now I think here we are again with Bernie Sanders. I think Bernie Sanders had his day and he ruined it because he couldn't stand up to his own party.
Yeah.
See, that's the difference between Bernie Sanders and then really Trump. Trump stood up to the Republicans.
Mm-hmm. Bernie bowed down to the
Democrats, which is why, again, I don't know why he calls himself an independent when he only stands with Democrats and he does whatever they ask.
Mm-hmm.
Trump really did stand up against his first round.
Mm-hmm.
He really stood up to the Republican Party, and they had no choice at the end but to endorse him.
Right,
because he won. He won that tug of war.
Right, that was a strong leader.
Right.
Bernie to me is just a weak candidate, a weak leader. He's just weak altogether. And the idea, and then you're going to attach, you know, AOC.
AOC, the interesting part about her is that she's weak and she's pointless, but she still does have a ton of followers.
And it's because she's loud. See, here's the thing though, is that people on the left, especially women, because women mostly support that, you know, and so people on the left like that. They think that her loud, you know, obnoxious attitude is somehow, to them it reads strength. That's what it does. It reads strength to the people on the left. But to a normal person, you know, that's just looking at her for what she is, it doesn't read that. It just reads like, I'm trying to pretend to be something that I'm not and try to sell you something that I'm not even really for. I'm going to try to sell that to you, and I'm going to be, you know, I'm going to do all of the gestures that you do when, you know, when you're being a loudmouth woman. You know, she's trying to sell something that I believe that she doesn't even believe in.
Yeah.
But she's just trying to, see, they are just trying to win.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is that they're not even, again, their focus is not in the right, that's why they're failing. Their focus is not in the right area. It's like, they're just trying to win a campaign. Understandable. People want to win, but the only way you win is if the public is on the side of what you're pushing forward. And so again, you have to read the room. The public majority clearly are not on the side of some of these crazy DEI, all these little social things that they're doing. The public is saying, no, we want to pay more attention to education. Like, why are we last? You know what I mean? Like, they're thinking that. They're like, oh, no, I don't really need to see a man in a woman's bathroom. I don't want to do that. Okay. I don't want DEI to be all over the place and then, you know, other people getting looked over because they don't want that. They don't want wars. People over here don't want wars and all these things. So that's what the room is saying, but they're still looking at, oh, well.
And they're supposed to be, and so it turns out you need to say more than we need a political revolution and not do it. I mean, Bernie and AOC they've gone along with the war machine 100% every single time.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's not like they are pushing against big government. They're the big, you know, the big wigs, the big establishment. They're not. They literally go along with them. I mean, even when AOC went on The View, and she kept calling Nancy Pelosi Mama Bear.
Yeah, that was so.
And see, Bernie Sanders and AOC and the squad. You know, that's Ilhan Omar and all of those types of people. So Sanders. You know, they're all supposed to be against the Chuck Schumers in the party. This is something Donald Trump actually did in the Republican Party. He went against a lot of what they were doing, and he pulled everybody on his side, including some Democrats.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Bernie Sanders and AOC were supposed to do that for the Democratic Party to make them go left. They have gone left in a lot of things, but they're not supposed to be for people like Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. You know what I mean? And but they go along with it because they're bought and paid for also.
Right. But they're trying to sell it that they're not bought and paid for.
Oh, we're this wing of the party. You know, and the truth is that
we care about the people.
That they've been proven to be so fake.
I know.
At this point. But they think that now that Donald Trump is the president, now there's actually a contrast between the two, so they can come back out and pretend like there's going to be this political revolution again, when we know that's not really what's going to happen.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen, and it shouldn't happen. There's no need for a political revolution, to be honest with you.
Well,
but
yeah,
not in that way. There isn't. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things to be said about politics that should be changed, and I think Donald Trump's doing a good job, honestly. But I think that Trump is doing what Joe Biden was supposed to do.
Yes. Now he has to repair.
He's kind of made everything normal again, and I mean normal in the best way. You know, and they don't really know how to answer him because they're realizing that all of these, what they consider forward-thinking, left-leaning, crazy things, you know, no breaks, no discipline, no nothing. Everybody can just be anything, and you know, they thought that was going to appeal because it sounds like it touches everybody when you say stuff like that.
It does, yeah.
You know, but I do think that Trump is doing a good job at triggering them enough to keep them focused on the triggering while he gets things done.
Right.
Because he's getting some stuff done, and all they seem to do is talk about stuff that he says, and I think he does it on purpose sometimes just to sort of keep them busy.
Because he has stuff to do.
Because he lives rent free in their head all the time. Anytime he talk to see Don Lemon, AOC, like they can only talk about him.
He always
whether he's the president or not.
He always says that he much rather deal with liberals.
Yeah.
Liberals than deal with conservatives because conservatives really pay attention to the detail. Liberals are not. They're just looking at the big picture of it
Emotional.
Yeah, they're not really going on to that. So, but yeah. Anyways, Jimmy Dore actually talked about this whole AOC and Bernie duo, this new power team they're trying to do. That's really, I want them to keep doing it. Please,
I like it.
Please run these two.
Can you imagine if AOC, if they run her for president?
I know, I would love. Please do it. Please do it. I'm there for it. Right, but
her and JD Vance.
Oh my God.
Or her and Vivek. I mean, just her and anybody over here. I mean,
anybody.
Could you imagine AOC and JD Vance at a debate? I mean, I think that would be epic. Honestly,
I would love that. But so Jimmy Dore talked a little bit about this, and see what he has to say.
So Bernie Sanders and AOC, two of the biggest phonies in politics. Two of the biggest phonies. Neither of them. She couldn't wait to come on my show, and then as soon as she got elected, never talked to me again. Never talked to Kyle Kalinske again. Never talked to anybody that was a true left media or adversarial. Right? So here, Bernie Sanders, the same thing. Bernie Sanders cucked Kyle Kalinske. Wouldn't even let Kyle Kalinske sit on his own show when he went to be interviewed. He would only be interviewed by ex-MSNBC host Crystal Ball, and made Bernie sit in the corner and watch him jizz all over his show.
Being cucked by Bernie, I mean, the cuckery of that's
unbelievable.
Orders of magnitude ahead of anything I've ever heard of.
Yeah. So they tweet out a picture of them at a rally. So now, before these people couldn't fill a gymnasium, nobody would give a shit what Bernie Sanders had to say. But now I was in Tempe last night, visited the same space 12 days before the 2024 election. He couldn't fill it. That Trump couldn't. They say he couldn't fill this. And now they're there and they filled it because it's pretend opposition. They don't oppose the oligarchy. They only oppose one sliver of it, the part of it that has Trump's face on it. That's all they're doing. So now they can pretend they're in opposition again. But when the oligarchy was Joe Biden and the military-industrial complex and Wall Street and slaughtering Gazans and slaughtering people in Ukraine, and they couldn't fill a closet. But now, since it's pretend and all these people are propagandized morons in the crowd, they think they're actually opposing something. They're not opposing anything.
That's what we were saying before. Yeah. Like, this isn't real. This isn't a real thing. By the way, Jimmy Dore is he's a lefty. Mm-hmm. He's a progressive. So his politics, I don't agree with most of the stuff, most of his politics. But Jimmy, to me, is a good example.
He's one of the more honest.
Yeah,
I believe he's a real lefty. And the thing is that I do believe that a lot of times the way he talks about politics is too emotional.
Yeah,
he looks at things in emotion. Here's a white man who's successful. Mm-hmm. He didn't need affirmative action. Mm-hmm. He didn't need anybody to feel sorry. He didn't need welfare. Mm-hmm. He comes from an intact home. That's why Jimmy is successful. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But he will go on and rail on too about minorities.
Like Bill Maher does.
Yeah. What's his name? What's his name? The black guy. What's his name? Oh God, the one with the hair.
Oh, Cornel West.
Cornel West then made him feel like a
a racist white man.
Racist white man. Then Jimmy's inner Trump.
He was like, wait a minute.
I stand up for you. I was like, right, this is why you don't do that, Jimmy.
Yeah.
But I will say this about Jimmy Dore. I do think that he's got an honest heart.
I do too.
I don't agree with politics, but I do think that he has an honest heart. And what he's saying about, them being against, they're being for Palestine, that is what they believe.
Yeah.
And AOC and them will totally go along with the Democratic Party against the left if it means they get to stay in power.
So it's people like Jimmy though that when there's talk about oppositions and stuff, like Karen was saying, we're right wing, that he's more left wing. He actually is left wing. I still like to hear people like this talk because I feel like even though I don't agree with his socialism and all this stuff, I don't agree with that. I do think, like Kara saying, his honest heart. I think that he thinks that America should be and look a certain way, and he wants to see it go that way, and I think that's not good for some of the things.
He believes in democratic socialism.
Yeah, and I just don't agree with that. But
he's a huge Republican audience too. So people like Jimmy. It's not even if you disagree with him, he comes across honest and he really does fight against his own party, which is why they don't like him. They don't like him. Like you said, he did do an interview years ago with AOC.
She was nobody.
Then when he started to push back, because the squad, as AOC is a part of, they were starting to cuck for the party, for the centrist Democrats that they were against. She didn't answer any of his callbacks, and then she blocked him on X, and they all started doing. So again, Crystal Ball and Kyle Kalinske are jerks. I don't like them.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. But again, if anybody starts pushing back against these types of people, even if you're on the left, they will start to walk away from you.
Yeah, but he is right. I'm gonna play more, but him talking about this whole setup they're doing here, they're propagandizing the audience right now. So see all those swarm of people out there, right? These people are going to hold up signs, they're going to do all the chants, they're going to be for it, right? But it's all phony.
Bernie Sanders just did. He just signed on to the slaughter of Gazans. Same thing with AOC.
Wait, but hold on. Who do you think has the nicer ass in that picture? Honestly, I think they both need some work.
Brianna Joy Gray was Bernie Sanders' press secretary when he ran for president last time. She tweeted this out. And she said, "This is going to seem so sinister when they tell these people to vote for oligarchs in 2028, just like they did in 2020 and 2024. They couldn't wait to vote for Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House. They wouldn't even use their leverage then."
Why is anybody showing up to a rally after that pathetic loss? And is that what it is, to get everybody's spirit? Who would go to this?
But who
would go to this?
Here's the people that they will. So they won't come on my show. No way. They won't go on black people's shows like Nick Cruz, the Revolutionary Blackout Network. They won't go on their show, but they'll go on this piece of shit. Look, there was a stadium of people. There was a stadium of people filled to listen to these two morons, these two charlatans. And that's what Bernie is. He's a charlatan, and that's what AOC is. And we've exposed AOC and Bernie a million times in a million ways this Sunday. They are not true lefties. They're not fighting for you. They don't represent anything except their oligarch overlords, okay? They're just pretending to keep this two-party fight going. Because why? Because that keeps people fighting each other, so we don't come together and fight against the people who they serve. Say he serves them, and she serves them. And they're there to keep us fighting each other so we don't come together and actually have a movement that challenges the establishment. And so that's what's happening. So this is a big tour, and don't fall for it. I mean, so when you see these people, this is living proof that America has the memory of a goldfish. Not that long ago, Bernie and AOC were struggling to fill a closet, and now that there's a bit of a contrast and they can play the two-party duopoly bullshit, they can raise the false hopes of an entire stadium. That's what that is. And this is just an empty-headed meathead doing the bidding of the Democratic National Committee, coaxing people into being on board with the oligarchy that puts a Democrat next to their name. That's it. That's what this is. And so I just want to let you know this is a failed. They're there to keep Americans and workers fighting against each other. All three of them. They're there to keep us in these siloed camps and keep thinking that the problem is half the country, instead of the problem being the people that they all are cucks to and they all serve, which is the oligarchy.
Bernie Sanders and AOC are like Mitt Romney for the right.
Yeah.
Who was George Bush's vice president? What was his name?
Cheney.
His daughter, Liz.
Liz, yeah.
Like Liz Cheney and Mitt Romney for the right.
Yeah.
They're just traitors. That's what they are. For the left, that is who they are. You know what I mean? And so as you can see, because Kurt and Jimmy are left-wing people, and the party in itself, because Jimmy's a part of that party, no matter what he wants to say, he's a part of that party. So is Kurt, so is Crystal Ball and Kyle Kulinski, and so is AOC, and they all don't agree. And what they can't understand is Trump somehow, was able to get everyone together and pull people over.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was because he was actually able to, because Trump used to be a Democrat, but he was able to get Democrats to be in his cabinet. Well, and because so now it looks like, if you're someone that cares about vaccines and you're someone who cares about healthy food, and RFK is now working over here and not over there, well, if you're a person that really cares about that, and on the left they do, then you're probably going to vote for Trump if you see that happen. If you cared about Tulsi Gabbard, which a lot of people did, you're going to come over here. You know what I mean? Elon Musk, they loved him.
Well,
and so now he's over here. You know what I mean?
They're over here burning down his cars and he's charging stations and writing things on random people's cars, and that's kind of stupid.
Yeah.
That's kind of dumb. When they were the ones in the beginning that even wanted that. The left wing people were the ones who wanted the electric cars, electric vehicles, because they cared about the climate stuff, right? So they were the one. They are the people who are buying Teslas. The majority of people who have a Tesla are all Democrats.
Right. When you key somebody's car, you're probably keying another Democrat.
Right. It's
when
true.
you blow up stations, you're actually creating pollution. But you're doing all the things that you're saying that you're the whole reason why you wanted the electric car in the first place. But because that person isn't on your side anymore, you completely give up your values. Yes, because they were weak to begin with.
Right. AOC. It makes $285,000 a year. She is now worth $9 million.
How did a bartender go from being a bartender and then to just making almost $10 million, being worth $10 million?
Bernie Sanders has, I believe, 4 homes in the $1 million range. But we want to fight the oligarchy. So you guys, this is the biggest scam that's about to happen.
And so now they are in a place, though, like you said, Bill Maher, they're in a place now where they're split because they're realizing that the majority of the is just normal people.
They are
going to work. They they don't want their jobs taken. They don't want inflation. They don't want to go to war. They just want to go to work.
That's it.
Come home and have dinner with their family. That's all they really, really want to do. But they don't want to protest every day.
No.
Like most people don't want to do that. And I think people like Bill Maher and even Gavin Newsom on some levels, like that's just not, you're not reading the room. Most people just don't want that stuff anymore. They're not into them. They're not into men and women's sports. They're not into just open borders and anybody can just come here. It's dangerous. They're not into just, going to war with people and protecting borders when our borders are open. Like that's just common sense. And anybody who doesn't think that's common sense isn't being common.
I noticed too that AOC, when she was talking at that rally, that she did use the word common sense. They're trying to take a little page out of the Republicans' playbook on that one. It's just so obvious what they're doing right now. It's kind of ridiculous.
They're just using what worked for Trump and see if it works for them.
They're trying to do podcasts. They're just doing all of that just to basically just copy and see if it works for them too.
And they won't. They just won't admit that the country it's not interested.
Yeah.
In what they're selling.
It's true.
Unless they do something like try to get a washed up Republican to come over and try to be a Democrat and pull some Republicans. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe Liz Cheney or something.
I don't really know what they're going to do, but I do know that watching them is fun.
We will keep you informed, that's for sure. All right, you guys, let us know what you think. Leave some comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts.